Oh, yeah.
I concur.
Move on.
You think this is bad? Westtown Thornberry School. That whole Westtown, that was one
The
road.
first one was kind of a little bit tongue in cheek.
Yes.
Merry Christmas, Michael.
Doesn't want to pay for
Regarding
it.
Derek's
And
we
we've examined it every.
and I forget what my first kind of
Hopefully they can start.
tongue in cheek was.
Yeah,
This.
that's frustrating, but they're not.
And every joke is true. But the second one was maybe possible. You'll see.
I'll figure
Your
something.
friend
All
wants
right.
to say hi.
Well,
You know, the thing is, I was talking
For
about-
10 minutes, I've been trying to say Merry Christmas.
Yeah, well, I don't say Merry too much, but I wish you a good Christmas. I don't use the word happy or merry too much.
Have a nice holiday.
Thank you. Well, Christmas is
Crazy.
good. Thank you, you too. What's that?
That's a kid from Mark.
Well, Frank has a head in here too. That's not a lot of
And it was
people.
like, you're reading
David, do you remember the last cake in this place?
1860, that gives me a lot of.
Janet and I that night?
I don't like to admit that, but
I don't think it ever.
my internal thermostat. As far as I'm concerned.
You see?
Derek, put this in
Marty?
So, yes.
He's doing pretty good tonight. I tried to get him here tonight. I told him I would bring him, take him even if he only wants 15 minutes. She's doing better.
I'm gonna go, we're leaving Friday for, we're getting out of the country for the holidays. Off the time, I'll be back on the 4th.
Matter of fact, he's going out.
Deep
The Duke
Rotten time to be buying, because his head was on the silver glass. Right, it's true.
Probably boarding or something.
was wave sliding.
Wave slide, I like that.
I like that $6,000
Call
for
it
this.
wave
Wave
sliding.
sliding.
No.
I'll go with that.
I don't think so.
All
Prices go up below attendance.
Oh, no, I have it on.
right, we're gonna get started with the board meeting. Everyone stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Flags over here.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if everyone would remain standing for a moment, please, we'll think of our WeGo and firefighters and to all of our Christian friends, a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I'll announce that the meeting tonight is being live streamed on YouTube. And Chairman's report, just want to let everyone know that Christmas trees will be collected on the regular yard waste pickup. All that information is available on our website. The Christmas tree lighting, by the way, was spectacular. And I want to special thanks to Santa. I know he's with us here in spirit. Did a great job. And the tree lighting was, I think, one of the largest crowds I've seen down there for the tree lighting. It was really spectacular. It was a really nice event. Starting in January, next year, yard waste will be picked up every Wednesday. It's a change going forward.
A lot of people pleased with that.
Yeah, and the township office will be closed on Fridays of December 24th and 31st for the holidays. And we don't have any public hearings tonight. Emergency services reports start with the Chief Bernard.
It's on, it is on.
Okay, I'm gonna keep my mask on because I've got a bad cold and I don't want to infect anybody before the holidays. I'd like to start tonight with giving an update on our community engagement events. I am extraordinarily pleased to announce that this year's One Warm Coat, Blue Beards for Charity, and Toys for Tot are probably raising more money, gathering more gifts than any other initiative that we've had in the past. And that is due in part to the generosity of our residents. I mean, I'm sure you saw the Toys for Tots downstairs and the warm coat. Overwhelming response. And in particular, I would like to give recognition to the parishioners from St. Simon's and Jude. We asked them to team up with us, to make sure that all of the children that are accompanying their mother in Kindred House at Gaudenzia House would have a Christmas. They went so amazingly generous with what they gave that not only did every child at Kindred House get multiple gifts, but they reached out to their Philadelphia compatriots and they found out that there were no gifts for the children in Philadelphia and they had extra gifts to give to them. So generosity of our residents, thank you so much for making sure that everybody in Chester County had a positive holiday.
Nice report.
Well, thank the police force for taking those initiatives and doing that for our residents and beyond. Thank you. It was a great program.
With regard to some basic statistics, in November, East Goshen had 462 calls for service, a 5% increase over November of 2020, a 7% increase over 2019. Overall calls for service in all three townships was higher in 2021 than it was in 2020 and 2019. But when you look at year-to-date calls for service, we are still slightly lower in 2021 than we were in 2019. So it's not unusual for it to be November to be a very busy month. And when I read some of the stuff that's on the police blotter, you'll understand why. There were 25 disturbances, fights, etc., which included 1 arrest for simple assault. It's not abnormal in November for us to have an increase in those types of calls. 14 frauds or scams, that's good news because that's slightly down from the norm for East Goshen. Unfortunately, we had 3 sex offenses in East Goshen in the month of November, and 2 of them were rapes. We're following up on them. We don't see any similarity between the cases. They're individual cases that are unconnected. There were 6 theft investigations. We've had an increase in porch pirates stealing packages from people as the holidays approach. Unfortunately, we've also had an increase in DUI and drug arrests. We like to remind people that there's a lot of services that you can call so that you don't get arrested for DUI. It's a very expensive mistake that you don't want to make. We had 3 missing persons reports in November for East Goshen, 1 juvenile, 2 adults. All people were located. So overwhelmingly, that was a busy month, but a positive month. Any questions from the board?
Actually, Chief, I do have a question. There had been some rumors on a social media platform, and I had forwarded to John, he forwarded it to you, regarding theft of car registrations in a particular area. And then there was also a rumor of theft from cars at the Wawa here on Haley Pike in the mornings.
Well,
Do you have any evidence of that, or is it all at this point rumor as far as you know?
the registration cards, we have no reports
Okay,
that
good.
anybody has reported that, but that is not uncommon. What I've reported in the past is that though people aren't reporting it to the police department, when people can get information about your identity, they can use that. So please don't leave that kind of material in your cars. I believe that I did see 1 theft from a vehicle at Wawa, but I didn't see a trend. It was just
Great.
1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I want to say I followed up
Yes.
with a comment, and I want to repeat it for people. I said, what?
Microphone.
It doesn't work.
Oh, good.
I said that that camera that you carry around also has a telephone in it. And when you see, or if you see something like that at Wawa or anywhere else, please call the We Go Police. They're like that on the spot, and people don't see. People report that they see it on Nextdoor, but then they don't call the police. Well, that doesn't do any good. We've got to call the police when we see things like that.
Absolutely.
We've tried to get on as many platforms as we can, but it's almost like an unlimited thing that we can't get on everything. And Ring Neighbors, we have a very strong presence on that website. And that's one of the ways that we were able to post on our Crime Watch a photograph of one of the porch pirates. Because one of the individuals who lived in that complex had a Ring camera and they called a picture of him stealing. So, I mean, there's only so many platforms we can go on, but if we don't know about it, we can't take action, so please call us and let us know.
Chief, have you had a problem with your ring registration? I tried twice to register, and for some reason, it my computer goes bonky.
No, I haven't heard any complaints of that. Have you reached out to the actual platform host?
I did not.
Michelle, you just said you had the same issue?
We have the same issue. We tried registering a number of times, and we reached out to Ring, and they said, well, all you gotta do is this. And they took us through, and this is my technical person, took us through a rigmarole of how to get on their, registry, and to no avail. I mean, we paid for it for a year, and we couldn't use it at all, unfortunately. So we just have our Xfinity cameras at the ready.
Well, my ring works, and I'll tell the.
Our ring doesn't work,
I
yeah.
have ring with my data in, but I can't get on the neighborhood. So
Really?
I will call you tomorrow and tell you that we're on ring if you need it.
Okay, I'm gonna reach out. Detective Weaverling is kind of our coordinator for the Ring platform. He's pretty technologically savvy, so if he has any tips, I will get them and I will have him reach out to you.
He's also tall. Could you ask him my garage camera?
Are we talking about Detective Weaverling?
No,
Same
not
one?
that.
No, we
Oh, no, he's sure.
No, he's like me, just Joe average.
Any other questions for Chief?
I hope you all
Russ,
have.
you have a-
Oh, question?
All the noise, or whether you call it nonsense or not, about defund the police, are you noticing any fallback or repercussions of that particular topic?
I can't say that
Like
I,
are we seeing reduction in staff because people don't want to come back?
well, we could always look for more people, but right now policing is not the most popular
Yeah.
profession in the world. So what we're trying to do to combat any resistance from the residents is we're engaging in a lot of social engagements, media engagements, community engagements. We were, I think, one of the only police departments in Pennsylvania that did a Faith in Blue initiative during the month of October with all 3 of the townships that we serve. And we got incredibly good feedback. So that's what we're doing to combat people who are questioning whether police departments are worth the money that.
I mean, I'm 100% behind them, that they're worth the money. Every time I call, it's immediate response.
I'm happy to hear
Yeah, I
because
can't
that's what
blame
we're
any of
aiming
you
for.
guys do. It's true.
I would simply add that at least for this supervisor, I've heard no one come to us with that. Now, we have some discussions we're having with our partner and with WeGo on looking at police services, but that stupid word,
I
defunding,
know.
has not come to my attention as a supervisor from any resident. I think our residents appreciate the police service we have.
I agree.
John?
I think so too.
The police budget is down 1.9% from last year, so we're very happy with the police. We are not as happy with Westtown.
Well, let's just leave it at that.
All right?
All right.
But like I said, if you ever have problems,
Thank you.
please reach out to us.
Chief, thanks, and
Thank
Merry
you, Chief.
Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas, Merry
And
Christmas,
to all
Happy
the
New Year.
officers, we extend our best, please.
Oh, I certainly will. Take care,
Yes, Chief.
everybody.
Have a good night.
You too. Hopefully I didn't touch anything it can't be
That's
disinfected.
what I'm doing, protecting the mic.
Carmen, would you like to do the honors of our,
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would be happy. I'm protecting your mic. The chief gave me a cold. The stats I'm going to give you are for East Goshen only. I'll start with Malvern. They had 37 ambulance calls, 11 basic life, and 26 advanced life. Goshen Fire Company had 14 fire calls, 4 fire police calls, and 152 EMS calls. And Good Fellowship had 46 for the month, which is 7.9. They're slightly down. The rest of the reports and the information is in your packet. Any questions? Mr. Lynch.
I have one. My colleagues, if you observed in the page 2 of the Goshen Fire Company monthly operations report, I saw in here under personnel updates, hiring of 6 new part-time career staff. Have I been, Derek, have I been out of the loop on this?
It's a good question, Mike.
I will check, we did not get any information on it from
I mean, it's their operations that are more career staff, 6 part-timers, it's, I'm sure they have it in hand with their budget, but it just caught my attention.
There's
And,
nothing official brought to us about it.
Okay.
There's been no finance, meetings this year from the fire department that we've been invited to.
I just
So
observed, I
I'm
saw
completely
it,
unaware of that as
and I
well,
just
yeah.
kind of, wow.
That's
6 new
surprising.
career firefighters.
Yeah.
Part-time, I don't know what part-time means, I don't know the implications of the budget. I know we have funding request pressures from our responders, which I understand, whether it's, a good fellowship ambulance, whether it's Goshen Fire Company, for
Right.
operational and infrastructure, but, and personnel as well. And, we've talked about the transition from volunteerism, which is way, way down in Pennsylvania, and it continues that trend, and moving towards career, but it's nice to keep us engaged. We don't want to manage them, that's not that's not our business. But since we're an active, important funding partner, I thought it'd be worthwhile to, have a little bit more than just a phrase in here that says hired 6 career part-timers.
I agree.
Okay.
I can't respond to that because that's not in my purview with
Yeah,
the fire company.
I'm not spotting.
However, we did Goshen had 6, I believe, volunteers come in, and 3, I think, going on 4, either have passed firefighting 1 or are about to pass firefighting 1, which means they're a firefighter, not a support staff. That's the biggest increase in volunteers, if we can just retain them.
Yeah.
Retainage is the
Yeah.
problem. So, I would ask, take that up with the executive director or with the board after the first of the year.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I know whether you had any insights, but I appreciate where you stand.
What insights I have, I can't really give you because it's not, for my opinion, to give.
Understand. Thanks, Don.
So I'd like to say, in ending, have a very nice Christmas and safe for everybody. And if Marty Shane is looking on, I will call you tomorrow. Merry Christmas to all.
Thanks,
Merry
Ron.
Christmas, Carmen, thank you.
Another interesting point in the Goshen Fire Company monthly operations report is that, East Goshen is down in every category. We're 8% down in total responses for municipality. Everybody else is up, so we're doing something right in fire safety and emergency services. All right. Next is our financial report. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As of November 30th, net pass-through general fund had revenues of $10,427,572, and expenses of $9,618,466, for a positive variance of $809,106. We are still up in revenues versus budget and prior year, and we are lower in expenses versus budget and prior year. Some of that was timing, but I still am projecting the year end to be a surplus of $404,531.
Any questions? All right, moving on to approval of the minutes. We don't have any minutes. Treasurer's report for December 16th. Dave, the question I had on that, the 51,000 incurred for construction costs in Hurricane Dam, is that the flood storm repair?
It's more than that. It includes, they have the itemized list. Let me see if I have that with me.
Yeah, I had the same question, because when I saw repairs, capital fund, 51,000, the question mark that I threw out to myself was, if it's capital reserve, that's infrastructure building or replacement, and repairs is a different category that I would think would be under operational. And then I asked the question to myself, is this a change order? Is this, or was this specific project costs? Because my understanding when I saw repairs is what, irrespective of the damage that occurred from the storm, that was undertaken by the contractor at their risk and expense. So that 51,000 kind of jumped out at me as well, Dave.
Yeah,
David,
this,
thanks.
this is part of the project costs.
There's definitely project costs, but there was some design enhancements and changes due to what we've seen during the two storms. One in August and then another one, Ida, a few weeks later, in order to ensure that it holds up long-term. So there was some change orders that happened that went above and beyond anything that the contractor would just keep himself.
I don't want to delay authorization of that because the chances are that the disbursements have already been prepared or dispersed and understanding the process. But I would like a fuller explanation of what that 51K was used for. I know I spoke with Mark Miller, and when I was on site with him a month or more back, he did show me an area of the stream below the dam that had been impacted by the storm, but he said Public Works specifically was going to amend that, bend and fill it in, et cetera, et cetera. And so I would just like to have an understanding of what the 51K was. Was it a surcharge, if it was a design change, field changes, or if it was repairs? And if it was repairs, you know, whether or not the capital was the best place to take it from. Those are my interests anyway.
It's part of the project, out of the original budget.
Okay.
So the temporary culvert, erosion control, we have, grading, topsoil, the channel reaches, pools and ripples pond is put in with riprap apron. That was $10,000.
Well, let me interrupt you, Dave. So what you're saying is some of these costs are specific to the approved project contract, but that there were also some design changes that incurred costs. So I'd at least like to know the breakdown of what the additional costs are to the original contract cost. I guess that's my interest. Just to,
Do you want that now, or can Dave work that out?
oh, you can work it out. I think it's information we should know about.
And just to
Yeah, I agree.
clarify, I don't know if the design changes are in that 50K or not, but there were some.
The addition of the riprap, I think, was a design change, because they realized that it was washing away.
Yeah, they need bigger number,
But-
yeah.
But,
But we
we're
have been,
piecemealing it.
we have been paying as you go, so to speak, in
Yeah.
the project, so it is
All
gonna
right.
come in chunks.
Maybe Dave could update us on that and where the project stands,
Yeah.
by email or something.
Yeah, an email or something. No Spanish Inquisition here. I just would like to know that if we're on budget according to the authorization, and if there was an additional cost to the approved budget and contract for this, just what those dollars were, if it's reflected out of this 51K.
Sure, I can itemize it. Yeah, all of the 50,000 in particular was in its original budget. The change order stuff that we're dealing with, I went over and saw it with Mark Miller today. That has a lot more to do with the post-hole drillings that are gonna happen with, the boardwalk.
Yeah, okay.
And Total Site wants to use a 50-ton auger, which is completely crazy and overkill.
Wow.
And charges,
That's a big one.
yeah, their original price was like $200,000
Oh.
for a change order, on a $900,000 house.
Which we're not.
And we're not okay with that. And so they came back and gave us another idea, and we're still pushing back on that one. I mean, talking to Mark, he said, I'll grab a couple guys and we'll go rent one for a couple $100 an hour and go out there and stand there. It's because they don't want to stand and do the manual labor. They want a machine to do it.
Well, I can appreciate that.
I do too, but we're not gonna pay them
Sometimes
for
I use
that.
that. I mean, I get it.
It's
I
tough.
think the word repairs threw myself there all the time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's, we've built those bridges before. So.
Yeah,
We know how-
that's what Mark was telling him.
Yeah,
He
we
said,
know how to do
we've got
that.
this right over by Applebrook.
Yeah,
We
we've
don't
done that before. All right, and are there any other questions about the bills or?
Mr. Chair, I move that we graciously accept the receipts and approve the expenditures as presented in the expenditure register and as summarized in the treasurer's report.
Second,
All right, any other questions, board members? Any public comments, questions? Call the question, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Old business, and the first item of business is to consider adoption of the 2022 budget for all township funds. We've had public meetings on this, and we've had,
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we adopt the 2022 proposed budget. And if you'd like, I can read the whole in the amounts of to at least get the motion on the table. Would that be smart or proper to do?
yeah, let's do that.
All right, so the motion is to the chair, make the motion that we adopt the 2022 proposed budget in the following amounts. General fund revenue expenses net of pass-through of $10,850,407. There is no transfer from the fund balance to balance the budget. That's an important caveat. General fund pass-through revenues and expenses of $2,227,143 as part of the general fund budget. State liquid fuels fund revenues and expenses of $496,668. That comes from our PennDOT allocation liquid fuels annually. Capital reserve fund revenues of $1,434,717 and expenses of $1,148,375. Transportation fund revenues of $720 and expenses of $0. Sewer fund operating fund revenues and expenses of $3,806,134. Refuse fund revenue and expenses of $1,357,809. Bond fund revenues of $475 and expenses of $2,170,855. Sewer capital reserve fund revenues of $369,757 and expenses of $983,013. Operating reserve fund revenues of $1,020 and expenses of $1,250,000. And interrelated is, I'll get to that, ARPA fund, which is our federal monies for the COVID events, revenues and expenses of $949,917. Interrelated to the operating reserve fund is the infrastructure sustainability fund, a new fund, revenues of $1,250,125 and expenses of $220,000 against that. And that is the motion. Oh, I further move that we approve the 2022 staff salaries as proposed and the Westtown East Goshen Police Budget version 5.0.
I get the easy job, I'm gonna second that.
Would you repeat what you're saying?
I would please to, and would you like to see a different size or color, Mr. Herzog? I can bring out all of variable inventory.
Listen, the Eagles are playing right now, so let's.
I mean, done a lot of work on this, and we thank Dave and Derek and the staff and the board. Our attention to this has been good, and just for public consumption, we're going to finish up this year with a surplus. In the past, we balanced the budget with our operating reserve, our operating reserve fund. This year, we're going to have a surplus, and next year, we're planning to balance the budget without a contribution from that fund balance. So it's a nice step forward. So.
Mr. Chair, I did have one comment I wanted to read into the record from a resident.
Okay.
And that
I was
was
just going to ask you if we received any kind of public input comment. I
It was
know
very
Russ has
simple.
been here, yes, things.
It was just a very simple one. Joanne Weinberger, resident, East Goshen resident, just thanked the board for their appropriation to the Malvern Library. And just wanted to remind the board that, going forward, there's going to be continued pressure on the library system as electronic materials continue to be a big portion of that. They're more expensive materials. And again, she just wanted to thank the board for continued support and hopefully more support in the future. So that was our comment.
Great, thank you. Any other board comments?
No.
Any public comments? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
May I bring up a matter at this point that is interrelated to 2021 as we move into 2022? from my colleagues that, understanding that currently we do have a projected forecast surplus of $400,000 plus, finishing up this year in the general fund, to think about where those dollars might go, i.e., they can just go back into the general fund balance. They could be used to supplement another fund, i.e. the infrastructure sustainability fund. We talked about that. We haven't established a real policy to fund it going forward. We could put it into another fund if it were so consensus. I did have one suggestion in an email of my board today about some work that we may be considering doing for some examination of police services, et cetera. That may be one place to fund such an assessment or study if we decide to go forward with that in 2022. So I just wanted to put it out there so we're thinking about it. Just because you have a surplus doesn't mean you have to spend it. And so if it goes back into the general fund balance, great. But if there are some good appropriations for it, since we've had good fortune this year, for something that's worthwhile, it's something I think this board should discuss sooner than later before January's out, I would think.
Is it something that we can comment on now, David?
Sure.
I like that idea too. If we have about 400,000 and some change, I would really like to see about 150 go into our infrastructure fund, about 150 go into our reserve operation fund, and whatever remains into our general fund, our operating expenses, so that way we can fund things that come up unexpectedly, whether it be something that, whatever it might happen to be. That way we don't have to go back and revisit the budget for some of those incidentals. I would like to do that.
I think that's a fair allocation.
Dave, Derek, does that sound mechanically something that you can reflect in the various?
We actually had a couple conversations over the last couple of weeks about, if the board wanted to do this with it or that with it.
Okay.
So it was, I think, our intention to, and Dave can speak for himself as well, but I think it was our intention to see, obviously, what the final number is going to be
Sure.
as it comes in. And then at some point, the first quarter, pass a resolution with
You-
some transfers.
Okay.
That was my thinking. I don't know if you have that.
I'd like to add to that, that's a good idea, not to spend the money until we're sure we have it.
Yeah, of course.
But also, the budget for 2021 had a $100,000 reduction in capital expenditure or CapEx budget. So I don't know if that's another thing you might want
Okay.
to
That's a good point.
make
Well,
up,
maybe-
make up that
maybe-
difference as well.
And maybe if we discuss this, we see what the final actual is for the year, whether it's the end of January or early, sometime in the first quarter, maybe give us a list of those things of it. And, you can say, well, what are the thoughts? We're gonna put together this list and we'll discuss it at a public meeting coming up. By the way, with the budget process, et cetera, I know that Chris has had an active role, so Chris, thank you as well. Thank you.
We got a capital reserve fund for 2022 that's pretty healthy, so if we need there, we can talk about that.
Yeah, we knew that there was gonna be a surplus, which is why we drew it down in the 21 budget
Yeah.
as well as the 22 budget.
Yeah,
So it's not a necessity as
Yeah.
much as I think.
it'd be a luxury to put some back in there relative to the real numbers that we see with our schedule.
Yeah.
I got you.
Great, okay.
Thank you.
All right, good discussion. The second item under old business is consider a resolution to establish a 2022 millage rate. And what the resolution is suggesting is that we maintain our real estate millage rate at 1.25 mils for the 17th year in a row, 18th year in a row.
Yeah, this is the
18th
standard
year.
resolution that's done every year and
Yeah.
attended and complementary to the budget approval process.
So,
Same tax rate, no tax increase.
entertain-
No tax
no
increase.
tax increase. Entertain that motion.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I would make the motion to adopt resolution 2022 tax village, in the amount of 1.25 mils on each dollar of assessed valuation, which equates to the sum of 0.125, 12.5 cents on each $100 of assessed valuation.
I'd second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Any
Um,
comments from the public?
I'm gonna make a quick comment that this tax was supposed to go away.
Oh,
But I do believe that we need to continue this village.
Mhm.
It was supposed to go away, but it's okay. No good tax ever goes away.
Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Let me think about that. Can we take a recess from now? I'm gonna think about that.
Take a walk, tap your feet. All right. All right,
It needs a second.
any
I
public
did,
comment?
yeah, I
A
second.
second.
No further board comment. I'll call the question. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Third item under old business is to consider the Futures Committee survey rewrite. We have extensive comments from my friend Mike Lynch, fellow supervisor, and kind of a revised Futures survey rewrite. So I'm just going to open this up for discussion from the board.
You want to start? Michelle, do you want to start?
Why don't you start?
Okay. Yeah, I did take a shot at recrafting some questions with the next survey by the Futures Committee. Now, before I go into any specifics or we discuss it, I want to kind of set the background table, if you will, a little bit. It was about a year or so ago, we did as a board agree, I thought, to extend our reach to our citizens to get some of the pulse of how residents are feeling or opinioned about various topics. And we don't have a lot of folks that come to the meetings. YouTube tells us that there aren't that many people that watch the meetings, and then not the most enjoyable thing to watch, and it's not the best format. We're going to upgrade our audio visual, et cetera. But we agreed that using the survey tool, understanding its imperfections, it was of value. The Futures Committee came up with an initial survey. We had a good response to it. I think there were over 600 responses, very good percentage. And it provided some base information, and it was very good. And I thought we had talked a little bit about then putting some spotlight on various topical surveys to, again, try and get a pulse from our residents about topics. And this latest survey is one that is focused on open space, trails, parks, funding, and related type projects like the Hershey's Mill Dam Park and the Milltown Dam Park project. So the initial effort that the Futures Committee had, I think we had various comments on, and as I did in referencing the draft that I put together with some questions or rewrites. And I know I had some input that said, well, you know, the way you put the language together, it's a little verbose. There's a little too much narrative before each of the 4 or 5 questions. And I indicated that, first of all, we have a very intelligent citizenry in East Goshen. And to answer a question, particularly these very generalized questions, a little background can help to decide if you want to answer the question in the first place. So I think if a resident is interested to take the time to do the survey, they're probably going to be interested to take a couple of minutes to read a little bit of background as to how the what the question is, how the question came to be, with just a little snapshot. The other comment that I had received was whether or not the survey is going to create expectations for our citizenry as to, well, you've done the survey now, you've talked about this and that, so you're going to do this now, right? You're going to do that. Well, we can have a caveat in the survey that explains that responses to the survey are not going to be the sole determiner for any project or funding or program. But it's going to be used in concert with our discussions with our staff, with our professionals, et cetera, as we advance projects, develop a new project, or discuss ongoing efforts and projects we have underway, whether it's a trail, whether it's Milltown Dam. So with that said, I think the survey is a worthwhile vehicle. I know we heard from one resident recently about the questioning really the value of this type of a survey, and really the need to do a very detailed expenditure analysis, and et cetera, et cetera. That's not the basis, that's not the purpose of the survey per se. Yeah, that work has taken place, will continue to take place with staff and professionals within the operations, and we're happy to share all that information. But the survey, gosh, it's tough enough to get people to answer 4 or 5 questions and participate in a survey, let alone go into some cost accounting where people may not have the background, et cetera, to start talking about cost value assessments, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that question, from comment from a resident, was just probably what said to me is, what's the purpose of a survey? What's the value of it in the first place? You're wasting your time. Well, it's not perfect, but it gives us some indication that we can't otherwise reach. We have 4 residents in attendance tonight, of now 18,410 residents in our township as of the 2020 survey. We can't get it, and I'm not going to get my information, at least as this supervisor goes. One, I don't participate in social media, but I'm not going to get it from places like Neighbors Next Door or whatever that one is. Social media is not the basis for getting public opinion, in my opinion. So I think that the surveys are a valuable thing, but we have to agree on what it looks like and how it goes out. And irrespective, we are going to get critiques of, wow, you didn't do this, or you skewed this, or the way you wrote it. It's impossible to have a perfect one, let alone to please everyone. I still think there's value in it. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Yeah, when you look at the survey as drafted
Which one?
by the Futures Committee, the revised one that we have, really only 5 questions. And the 5 simple questions that just get at some basic opinions. Mike, I looked at some of the ones that you suggested, and you and I haven't talked about this, but yours would require Likert scale answers to do value the township facilities. And I think a lot of that's going to be neighborhood specific. I think people in Milltown are going to value the Hershey's Mill Dam perhaps, and vice versa. So I'm worried that kind of question would be skewed. So I kind of flip it back to the Futures Committee and the people on that committee that understand sabermetrics and survey how to ask a question and all that kind of stuff. So I'm in favor of moving forward this. I think this, 5 simple questions, going to give us some good data about how people feel. It'll give us, as you said, a data point. It's not a document that we're going to use to make decisions, but it's going to be an input data point to help us make decisions along with other data points. So I think we can, with the correction that there is no such thing as Hershey Estates. I live in Hershey's
Mill
apostrophe S Mill Estate.
Hershey's Mill Estates, and it's the villages of Hershey's Mill, not the villages of Hershey Mill.
Yeah.
It's not Hershey's Mill. It was a man by the name of and wife of Hershey's Mill.
Yeah.
So that always bothers me, and I know it does you as well, Christy.
With that caveat, I think I'm good with the draft. And again, with I think we did put the kind of preamble in there about the purpose of the survey and so on, right? I'm sure that's.
Well,
Go ahead, Michelle.
my comments are, I live in Grand Oak, Bittersweet, not Grand Oaks. So the fact that I'm a little disappointed that the typographical and grammatical corrections weren't made in this iteration. As far as the questions are concerned, I had sent an extensive email to someone on the Futures Committee and asked him to share it with the committee. None of my suggestions were taken into consideration. I also think the problem that I have is that these things already exist. And in all fairness, Mike, don't get me wrong. I did like where your survey was going. But, and it was interesting, David, your points to that. But I will say that we already have these assets. And so it doesn't really much matter how any of us feel about them. They're our assets and we have to maintain them, and we have to maintain them to the best of our ability. And so what I would rather see coming out of a futurist survey would be more, what kind of projects would our residents want to see in the future? Because we still have these projects that are ongoing. Not one of them is complete. And so I don't want to, we're offering them pumpkin pie. And would you like whipped cream with that? Would you like ice cream with that? Do you want coffee as well? I want it all. Well, that's fine and good, but my point is that we haven't even completed these projects. And I feel like once we've gotten to the point where we're starting construction on Milltown Dam, the Hershey's Mill Dam construction is completed, and we've determined a direction for the Paley Pike Trail. I think that once we've determined that direction, once we've started construction on Milltown Dam, I think that is the only time that we can start considering what the next projects should possibly be. But I think residents need to tell us what that direction should be.
By definition, this is the Futures Committee. And I think, if you look at how long it took us to develop our comprehensive plan and anything we do, I think, we can't wait, in my opinion. I think we need to, I'd like to know, and these are pretty general questions. Question is, how do you feel about open space? We've got 2.5 times more open space than most townships our size. It's 27% of our, I'd like to know, I actually like that question, do we want to maintain the 27? Would you like more open space? If you like more open space, are you willing to pay taxes because open space doesn't generate tax revenue? Are you willing to pay more taxes to have more open space? I like the direction of those questions.
Well, that's a future leading question.
I do like that as well, but we also can't say, how about reducing the amount of open space, likely decreasing our taxes? That has to go.
I think that one makes.
Which is an interesting question. Should we sell some of our open space
No.
if we need the taxes?
No, and I don't, but
if you don't want to ask the
Michelle's
question.
point is really well taken about being a little more, I have been caught in this current zone, understanding we haven't, the Milltown Dam is an example that while I was looking forward to it, we've got an illustration and a plan that shows a very substantial redo of the dam location into a park-like setting with a lot of amenities, as you mentioned, pumpkin pie, with whipped cream, with coffee, with this, cordial, whatever. There's a lot there. And we know that over time, these projects, they take so long to implement that the cost increases likely from the original estimates of what we've got. So trying to get a feel for that one to say is there value or not. I was thinking about when we finally get to bidding documents and we maybe put options in about various things, we have some sense from residents to say, or greatest thing in the world, then we can figure out, because to implement the plan as we currently have it, I know it's going to be substantially over our existing budget because of the time frame. That was one of the kind of future implicit leading ones that I had. But your point's really well taken, Michelle. The open space question. We have some open space. It's not in East Bradford, but that was a different world that I lived in and worked in. But we have a couple substantial tracts of open space left. Are they of interest? And that's, I think I may have even, I'm not sure I mentioned anything specific about location. Yeah, maybe I did when I put the question together. But that was kind of future leading as well. But, point well taken. But how long we wait before we get this out, I'm not quite sure. Because we can always continue to do snapshots, I think. I just see this as a dynamic process that I want to continue to engage our residents somehow in a broader platform to get comments rather than reactions when something happens and then there's this firestorm, to at least get some sense and to let folks know that we're interested in knowing what they're thinking when we bring up, vanilla ice cream or chocolate cake. I'd like to know what they're thinking about it, so that we can have some sense as a data point, a comment point that will go into our conversations and our discussions. So, yeah, I don't know how to exactly bake this, but I think it's a really important communication, an interactive communication process that we have to find a way, in my opinion, to forward and move with it.
All right.
One more shot at it, at the survey, and come back again in next month, perhaps? Tom, I know you're sitting there, what are you hearing from what we're saying?
We're not proposing that survey that you guys are reviewing. That was never our intent. We didn't take into consideration your last feedback, Michelle, that you shared with us. We did not take into consideration. Our committee hasn't met since we've gotten that feedback. So actually, and I think Micah took it on himself to go ahead and have this discussion, which I think is very good. I think what would be helpful to us to create a worthwhile survey is to find out what you guys would like to know about. Okay, I heard tonight, you'd like to know about open space. And so, okay, that's a good question. We'll keep that in there. Mike actually raised the thing about the path. Do people want to finish the path? That might be something that you guys are interested in knowing, okay? I think that might be a valid question. The issue around the path that you raised the issue around, Michelle, I don't think that question was very well worded in hindsight because you had those concerns. What we were really talking about, wasn't really about the path per se, lighting around the path. It was the whole concept of the Paoli Pike master plan where we had lighting along Paoli Pike between Boot Road and 352. And we had lighting, we had banners, and we had maybe some street trees.
Right.
And so that was really that question. And whether you want to ask that question or not, that's a different question. But that's, I guess, what I'd like, that would be helpful.
So this is helpful feedback for you.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'd like to
And I'd like
propose,
to get some more feedback.
what I'd like to propose is, so Mike has provided some feedback, Michelle has, I have not, to the future committee, I don't know if John has. Could we leave it at, tonight we've given you some feedback, Tom.
Sure.
You've had some written feedback. Between now and your next futures committee, I will give you some feedback.
Okay, good.
And then you can come back to us with a,
I'm sorry.
When's the next meeting?
When?
Like January 17th or something like that.
And you know what, then what will be good?
January 20th.
Yeah, and I know we're gonna hit Cody, our new supervisor,
Exactly.
supervisor-elect. We're gonna hit him hard with all sorts of stuff right off the bat, but, that's one opportunity to say, Cody, you're on the board now. You've got 10 days to get some input on the survey. That's gonna be one.
And I
We're
did
gonna
meet,
engage him quickly, right? Come on, Cody.
I have.
Where is Cody, by the way?
I have met with Cody and he is very interested in.
Good. I thought he would be.
All right. Any other comment on this? I think we have a plan forward. Is that okay, Tom?
Is that helpful? A bit, Tom? Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
I mean, what we're trying to do is capture the things that will help you all
Yeah.
out in the future, Michelle. I understand you got all these projects, and that's really why I like some of the things you added, Mike, but I didn't like some.
Yeah.
I thought the dams, they're happening, so,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
why
I got
sort of looked at that.
I got it.
I saw, the one thing that you didn't have in there, you made it optional to figure out what the demographics are. That's very important in survey, to find out whether we've got a valid survey or not, and whether all the neighborhoods are represented and all the age groups are represented. We have to have that.
And I appreciate that. My comment was, in recognizing that, I said, can we put this, all right, if it's not optional, but at least put it at the end of the survey, so that the key questions are out front right off the bat, and then, would you please complete this part of the survey so that we can best evaluate, within our demographics, the dynamics of the responses? That would be great.
I don't know how to answer that question.
Tom.
I'll let my survey expert answer that.
Well, that's what I'd also, another bit of feedback is, I was thinking that perhaps a survey that begins with, are you an East Goshen Township resident? If so, yes, I live in one of the following communities. Can we leave it at that for the initial, qualifiers?
We could,
And then potentially like these guys are saying, put the rest of the stuff at the end of the survey,
Okay.
But at least get the community out there first. Which
Right.
community are they in? At least we'd have that information, and if they choose not to answer the rest of the questions, we still know that they live in that particular community. And I think that that should be enough to at least, I mean, you're sending it out to a closed list, if you will. And generally speaking, people who are not interested are not gonna go to the East Goshen website if they live in West Goshen
True.
and do that survey.
I think we only had, last time, I think we only had one response, which was the East Goshen.
Okay, great. All right, path forward, I think we're good.
Okay.
All right.
Tom, I just want to say in the spirit of the holidays, I like everything about you though. And I'll see you on the golf course.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, all.
Yeah, same to you, Tom, thank you.
All right, next is to consider a proposal from the Cohen Wall Group. We addressed this at the last meeting, and I will confess to be confused by the summary. We're not, I think we asked that if we spend the money, could we kind of do a quasi cost benefit? And I saw in here that we were recommending it, but we weren't sure whether we could get the desired return to our investment unless enough impactful revenue streams are added. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
I was
And
confused
you
a
put this
little
whole
too.
thing together, you put this whole, gosh, I should have given this more time. I gave it a cursory perusal, and now I'm really apologetic because you spent a lot of time on this.
No, it's really just, I pulled all of, so the easiest way for me to look at Comcast was to look at Verizon, which we've already done.
Yeah.
So I looked back and I pulled from 2017 up through third quarter of 2021. That is this graph. So this is all of our franchise fee that we got. So basically we spiked in 2019 and Verizon's gone down consistently until you can see we jump up. That black line is when we redid the contract. So we've only got 2 quarters under our belt.
Interesting.
So the analysis basically points to, looking at Verizon, there does look like a trend that the contract negotiation was helpful. And more substantially with Verizon than could possibly be with Comcast.
Because there are more subscribers to Verizon, right? Percentage of Verizon subscribers in the township is higher than Comcast, do we know that? It's
Yes.
probably in here,
I didn't put the number of subscribers, but yes, currently we got more Verizon than Comcast.
Okay.
But when you look at Comcast, since 2018, it's really been relatively flat. And the jump from 2018 to 2021 is, what was the percentage? It's really only gone down 0.7% annually for the past 3 years. So versus Verizon, which we've seen drop 3.7% annually. So it makes sense that the renegotiation on Verizon was more impactful. Would we get that same bang for our buck in Comcast? I don't have enough data from Verizon yet, but also I pulled the contracts for Comcast and looked at Verizon, the different streams that we had gotten versus what was in there. The way they put them on the information when they give you the quarterly, which has the individual months on it, they lump them into groups, so you can't suss out the detail to get a really granular look at what that revenue stream's doing. My personal opinion is, I don't know that $6,000 we're gonna recoup within that 5-year period. it's possible, but, well, actually, it's the old contract we did was $6,000. And that was a 5-year term for the contrast. So this new one would be $8,000 if the 6 municipalities do it. So that's 20% savings, but, it's $1,500 a year. Are we gonna get $1,500 a year from them?
Hold on one second, I just have a quick question.
That's well.
Okay, so let me understand. I'm so confused. When the last negotiation happened, have we realized the savings of the cost of the negotiations since then?
Have we had the increased
Thank you.
revenue to offset the expense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did that spike pay for the?
You'd have to say no because I didn't have the data that was before then, and the subscribers took a nosedive right around that time. So it's.
But we don't know, we also don't know,
down no matter what.
we don't know what inflation is gonna be looking like though in another 3 years for lawyers' fees.
Correct.
Well,
We
I also
could be-
think the cord cutting is such a new concept that there's not a lot of data when you go past
Right.
5 or 6 years. ago as
right.
well. So, but to Michelle's point, whenever we do this, we're gonna have to use a professional service. My idea of bringing this forward was just trying to get it out of the way, knowing that, versus what's the cost of doing this with the Cone Group or another law firm 3 years from now. That was my big.
And I keep going back to that, which is why I fall on the side of being in favor of participating in this negotiation.
Well, I mean, there's an opportunity cost, perhaps. We talked about the surplus. We've got a couple extra dollars to do some due diligence here. We don't have an
It's gonna
absolute
be done.
understanding that it's going to be an effective expenditure, but we're doing our due diligence, and sometimes you have to spend money, and you may not get the answer that you want, but at least we went through the process with good intention. So in that regard, maybe we could use some of the surplus for that, Michelle.
So, Mr. Chairman, are you ready for me to make a motion?
I am. Thank you.
I'm gonna make a motion that we engage the Cone Law Group and work with the other aforementioned Chester County municipalities to commence the cable franchise agreement process with Comcast of Pennsylvania, LLC.
Second motion.
Thank you, John. Any further board discussion? Any public comment on that?
David, I appreciate your work on this, and I am now going to read it thoroughly before the weekend.
Thank you.
It'll confuse you even more.
I read it thoroughly and I was confused. That either says something about Dave or me. I'm not sure.
I was confused as well.
Russ Frank, 451 Gateswood Drive. I do have a couple questions, if I may, continue to ask about this. Earlier, I did mention the difference between how the surveys, again, that word survey, CNET and JD Power rated the difference between the two. Verizon was always higher than Comcast. But the real thing that I want to ask about, under section 1, page 4, where it talks about the franchise fee revenue.
Mhm.
Can someone explain to me, what does this mean? It's the last line on that section.
Do you explain it?
Please note that franchise fees are passed through to cable customers as a separate line item on their bills.
Yes, if you look at your bill, Russ,
Obviously, I haven't.
yeah, you will see.
But Mike didn't read this.
You will see 5% municipal or local franchisee fee, and you'll see $1.32 or $1.28 or something like that.
So every month I'm paying, I use Verizon. So every month I'm paying them $1, say it as an example, $1 for Verizon coming through our township.
That's
So
exactly-
that Verizon can pay you guys back.
That's
Yes.
exactly right.
That's
Okay.
exactly what.
And they
That's what I kinda thought, but-
quarterly basis.
Then, part 2. Franchise fee author accountability. What does this section mean? You look at the bundle services, what does that mean? Anybody does a bundle service where they have a triple play, they pay you guys less or charge us less, pay you less?
Well, the way that they word it that way is because when they do a bundled service, technically, you're not paying for one of them as much as the other.
Right,
So now
that's
you're
right.
getting 3,
Right.
so they drop the price of every one. And it's basically a fancy way of just saying, whatever that cost is we charge in total is what the revenue could be based on.
Now, is that on just internet service Because if it's a telephone, do you have to pay?
No, for instance, I have a triple play with Verizon, and we have one of the triples is the landline.
Right.
We're definitely not paying a franchise fee on the landline.
Okay.
Telephone service. The internet, as far as I know, we're not paying a fee on the internet either. It's only on cable television. And that comes back to the 1993 Cable Consumer Act, whatever it was, the FCC case. That was 96. It comes back, that was the whole basis
Okay.
for a lot of what we currently have. So that triple play, there would be only one, and that would be related to
Okay.
television, the FiOS television services.
Okay. Then the last question is, under section 3, service to unserved areas. Does this give Comcast, if we choose Comcast, the open right to install new lines falling within East Goshen Township, or just the unserved areas? Like, so what I'm looking at there is, we go with Comcast, and they want to run new lines, are they going to come through Marydale Farms?
Well,
Because Marydale Farms is right now strictly Verizon, what is it,
yeah, one of the values of,
Yeah.
of this Consumer Act that was the FCC propagated was to ensure that the prior practice of exclusivity contracts, an entity, a cable provider gets into one jurisdiction and says, this is an exclusive contract, nobody else can come in. That was one of the basis for that act in 1996, to create a more even playing ground for the consumer to have competition and be able to make a choice. Cable companies do not have to, they're not required to provide service to every place within the jurisdiction.
Right.
But they have parameters for doing it. If there are, within a mile of cable, we have a density of 15 or 30 households or properties, et cetera, that can hook up, we will run the lines. So Comcast, for instance, now East Goshen, I don't know what our current cable map is, but we've got to be almost completely blanketed, almost like water surface. I mean, they're pretty well served. But you just, I think, alluded to, Russ, if I heard you correctly, there may be a couple areas where Comcast is not serving right now, and they could, if there's a threshold for them to make money, to come in and run a line so that they have, and people can make a choice then. I don't want Verizon anymore. I'd rather have cable. I want to petition the township to see if we can get Comcast to serve our area. We'd engage them and see what their conversation is. Will they make a concession if the density isn't there? Why haven't they served it to this point? We've got people interested. We'd open up one of those discussions. But they don't have to go into a location unless they either initiate it themselves and see if there's profitability, or there's a request from the area, and then they see whether it can financially work within their capital plan to, cost that out without having to charge additional installation costs to the individual new subscribers.
So this is strictly just for unserviced areas?
That provision.
Yeah. So, because, they ran fiber optics through most of the.
Pretty much covered the township when
Right.
FiOS did it.
Yeah, when FiOS did.
Oh,
So
when
if
Verizon
now Comcast comes through, will they can they still do the same thing? Go through open-ended, just say, I'm coming through no matter what?
No, I mean, it would be a process we'd have to go through, as Mike said, and they'd have to find the right of way and make it worthwhile financially.
Right.
I mean, from a practical standpoint, if they're not married at this point, it might never be. But to your question, they could come to us and say they want to go into this neighborhood because they think it's, there's subscribers in there that would like to switch and it's profitable, but it wouldn't be just carte blanche. They would have to have a conversation with the township on how to go about it. And then it would probably involve Pico, because a lot of lines for cable are run on similar poles, even outside of the neighborhood. So it would be a process.
Now, we could, certainly the township could initiate just a conversation with Comcast, say, do you have any plans to extend to this established neighborhood? Verizon's in there, are you interested? Without opening up a whole can of worms. On the converse, within the Marydale Association, you have a good communication network there. you guys could discuss that and say, yeah, I'm sick of Verizon, I would really like to have Comcast, or at least an option, what do we do? And you could come to the township and say, well, we'll contact Comcast, see what we can find out from the municipal standpoint and share that with you. I mean, it can work in a couple of ways if there was that interest in that kind of an initiative.
All right, yeah, the motion on the table here is whether we're gonna approve we're kind of getting off the topic of the motion.
I'm good with that.
So, so let us call the question. All those in favor, aye.
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 No, motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Let's move on to new business.
Okay.
The first thing we need to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we do this every year, the group bids. And these are not actual dollars that we spend. These are threshold dollars based on the actual cost would be based on our usage of these services going forward. I think that's remembering that process each year. So anyone have any?
I just had one. Under the rental equipment without operators, we had Foley and Groff, and the footnote here is that Foley was recommended to be awarded the contract, but Groff Tractor did not bid all the items as required. The only comment I had was, okay, but how did the individual items within that overall equipment list bid out? Did Groff in fact have some items, even though they didn't bid all of them, some items that were bid lower, say a milling machine or something like that was bid lower by Groff than Foley? And I wonder whether we can do anything there or not. So I didn't see a breakdown of the pieces of equipment and what the individual, I imagine the bid was broken out by pieces of equipment and bidding amounts.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to go over Mark, the spreadsheet with Mark. I know they bid on some things, whether they were smaller numbers than Foley or not, I don't think we even got past that point because it was a prerequisite to.
Oh, so it was a big flaw in their submission, it was an omission or a flaw, so therefore they're automatically.
Yeah, because I think it makes it more difficult to deal with multiple companies in that meeting.
Understand.
Oh, yeah.
Although-
If you cherry pick the Groff, where they bid and maybe they were lower, and then you turned around to Foley and said, well, give us the other part of it.
Yeah.
Foley,
Bids might not be
if
the
I were
same.
Foley, I'd say pound sand.
So, well, and I get that completely, John. Well, I guess my comment then would have been the asterisk should have said, Groff, failed in its bid submission, to comply with the requirements,
Okay.
therefore they've been
I can buy
eliminated.
that.
Note that Groff is getting the bid for the milling machine round, so.
Oh, yeah, that's right, on the next page, I think that, yeah.
Yeah, so they were awarded.
So, okay, that was the only question I had, and John, your point, and Derek, I understand, so thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, are you ready for a motion?
I am.
Okay. I would make a motion.
So that we award the fuel bid to Rhodes Energy doing business as Riley and Sons in the amount of $22,534. To award rental equipment without operator bid to Foley in the amount of $19,725 for weekly and $50,450 for monthly rentals. The milling machine rental bid to Groff Tractor Mid-Atlantic in the amount of $7,000 for daily rental or $14,000 for 10-day rental of 51-inch wide and $9,000 daily or $18,000 for 10-day rental of an 86-inch wide milling machine. Lastly, the triaxle dump truck rental bid to Fetters Trucking and DeStefano Landscape in the amount of $95 per hour.
Second motion.
Any further question about this? Any members of the public with questions?
One quick one. This is just from my understanding. On the fuel calculations, there's an actual rate there, or value there. Is that based on How's that based? Is that based on
They-
gallons
based on
used?
usage, I guess, for the prior year to give at least a base amount. I think that's the way it's been done in the past, that there, something was floated that said, you know, we used this much last year and they bid on it. I mean, it's a rack price, so that there's usually, they give an amount. I'm not sure that they're giving per gallon amounts now. The township, the municipal governments do not pay taxes, state taxes on gasoline.
Right.
So the 75 cents per gallon that the state charges, the townships get a break on it, second highest in the country.
I'll email you tomorrow, Russ,
Yeah.
after I talk to Mark.
I didn't know if it was is it a fixed rate or
It's
floating
not a
rate?
fix, yeah, it's not fixed and.
It's what's on the rack at the time, so it does vary. according to the
So you're
market.
paying actual,
Yeah,
okay.
Those are the same guys that we had this past year.
I know we had used Riley, there aren't that many, that's the thing.
They're, well, it's getting less and less too.
I know.
It was like 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks.
All right,
Motion on the table?
no, motion on the table, I'd like to, there's no further questions, I'd like to call a question, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, motion carries for nothing. Final new business is, discussion on sustainability advisory committee's plan for Expo on the 24th. Christie, you're not asking us to basically do anything here other than just give us information, and we have to approve the use of our facility, I guess.
I'll tell you what I've written down on the sheet that was prepared here, I just simply said I support the initiative and let them run with it.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, I'm good with it as well, so
I was just gonna say, I said, I was gonna say, Christie, I don't think you have to read what you've
No, I'm not
submitted to
going
us.
to. I just want to make a few quick comments. If I
Great.
could. That's right. Yeah, first of all, it's great to be here. I remember so many times being here when people were out the door, and we miss those days, I know. Experts I read yesterday are saying the pandemic may be with us to 2024, so new reality.
That's good news. What?
Sorry.
Okay, so, I'm leaving.
First of all, thank you so much for approving our little survey for the Sustainability Committee. It was not nearly as professional a product as Tom's because we used a free service and people were not so happy with, that we couldn't use as many options for questions. But it was extremely helpful, over 400 responses. And of those, 160 people gave us commentary in addition to answering the questions, some paragraphs long. We got a whole bunch of new information and it was very helpful. So now what we'd like to do in prelude to, and we are asking tonight permission to, we've temporarily secured the township building on April 24th, which is the Sunday of Earth Day weekend. So it's a timely, and we will have a backup date because, like we had to postpone Community Day, if Omicron is, raging at that time, we should have a backup date.
That'll
But
be a
we
new
will-
one by then, don't worry.
we will do that. So we're just asking you to definitely hold the date and let us continue our planning and come back to you with specifics. In prelude to that, I would just like to ask, with the information we've gotten from our survey, may we now approach the small number of businesses within East Goshen. Our whole approach is the carrot, never the stick. We're not going to come to you with any request for a mandate against plastic bags or anything like that. We want to go to them and say, we want to help you. We know it's been a tough, 18 months or whatever. We'd like to offer you some options if you would like them to what you might be able to do instead of the styrofoam, et cetera. And we're going to have an expo if we can offer any products that might be useful to you. We want to offer incentives that you can use to promote your business. If we will have a list of green options, and we'd like to give them awards. They can post it in the window on their website. They can use it for their own promotion. So we'd like just permission to go with the information we got from the survey to approach the businesses. Some will be a phone call, some will be in person, but it's really thanking them, asking them what we can do to help, and seeing, asking them if they agree with our list of green options, make it a partnership. We're not gonna impose anything on them, but say, do you like our list? Would you like to comply? Then we can promote you on the website as a green, part of our sustainable green, business. Is that okay? Can we
I have a
just?
question or
Sure.
two. Is this gonna cost us anything?
No, not a penny.
Not a penny.
No, our
Okay.
committee, it's a small number of businesses. We're not like West,
Well,
Westchester.
I don't mean just the businesses, I mean the whole meeting.
Program.
The expo,
Yes.
we have asked for a total of 500 in our whole next year's budget, and 300 or 400 of that is for the expo. It's really just, offer some food, et cetera. We're going to solicit coupons and, free offers and let businesses give out things, but we're not asking for anything out of the ordinary.
And-
And that's in our budget,
And-
that's in the 22 budget.
The committee will be doing the work, not the staff, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanna hear, thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna approach the elementary school and ask them to use their parking lot. We will, have someone who help direct traffic. We'll do all that with volunteers,
Good.
okay?
Sounds positive, Christie, so.
Is that okay with everybody?
I'm
You got
okay
a nod to go ahead.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, we don't have to make an official vote on that.
No,
We
no.
just
We
need
didn't
to,
do a motion, we just
No.
wanted to,
yeah.
and again, if the pandemic is, we will have a backup date, okay?
Christie, do you know if you're gonna be, something we hadn't discussed, and I don't know if you will you have there be, an admission fee of sorts
No.
for vendors?
No, I don't think so, no.
I would suggest that you talk about that, because even if it's a refundable amount, it at least makes it a little bit more of a commitment
They commit.
to say, we'd like you to reserve your area for $50.
That's a good point, if you.
And as long as you come, we'll give you your check back that day.
Okay, or we were thinking about maybe some co-sponsors, a few
That's
businesses,
fine
larger
too.
businesses, and then
Yeah.
that would pay the additional.
Yeah, but you'll
But we'll
find
approach both,
people will just not show up.
okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay,
Anything else?
Just make it sound.
Thanks, Christie.
Okay, thank you.
Any other matter?
Oh,
the board
yes.
has?
I think that you
To take a moment and say thanks to Marty for all of his years of service.
Absolutely right.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I don't think there are,
Do you think he can see the?
I think we're gonna need to bring the camera to the cake.
Well, hold on, let me,
Well, while that's going on, I'd like to just say a few words, and Marty, if you're listening, that's wonderful.
try to bring this up on the camera real quick.
Make it quick.
I think, well, I might, I think almost everybody in the township, if they've been, had any attention at all to the township building, the township operation, the local government, has known the name of Marty Shane, over these last decades. Marty Shane has seen East Goshen Township, during this last generation plus of his service, go through a lot of change, and so much of it has been positive. People are concerned about, he saw, of course, he saw the wave of suburbanization that occurred. Overall, it was well managed. We've got a beautiful community that is suburbanized, but valued and sought after properties and residential living here in the township. There've been, he was a watchdog for many, many aspects. When I think, here I am, I'm in the 5th year of service, 2 more years on a single term. Marty completed 6 terms as an elected official, 36 years. I don't know how he did it, except an extreme interest in citizenry, civic duty, and a commitment to a place that he loves and cares about. If he wasn't doing what he did so well, he wouldn't have been reelected 5 times. Unlike myself, I'm not going to be electable for a second term. That's one reason I'm protecting myself. I'm not running for a second term. But Marty put himself out there for 36 years. And these last couple of years have been tough on Marty and his bride, Pat. The COVID pandemic and is isolating disturbance to our households and our lifestyles has particularly affected Marty. And he's had a tough go this past year. That's why he hasn't been here. But his service has been essentially non-pareil as far as East Goshen Township is concerned. He served roles at the county level with the Chester County Association of Township Officials, a longtime member of the Chester County Planning Commission, and others. If there's anything to be said about Marty, it is that his dedication to his public service here it has been a marvel, and it is to be applauded. Wish he could be here to have his cake and eat it too. We will miss him. I'll miss him in these next couple of years that I'll be around, perhaps. And I think the township will miss the kind of governance and very good decision-making and collaboration that he's had with all his colleagues over the years. So Marty, congratulations on your service. We love you, and we think you've done a wonderful job.
I'll ditto. I will ditto Mike's comments, and I've said this to Marty personally. I'd like to say it publicly. I've been here 4 years, and Marty basically, we started in a position of, I was the first Democrat to be voted in 200 years in East Goshen Township. Marty being a Republican, wasn't too sure what was going on, but you know what he did? He took me under his wings and he mentored me, and I really always appreciate that. So thank you, Marty.
I don't think I have any other comments that can top the ones that have already been mentioned. So congratulations to Marty, and sorry you can't be here with us tonight.
Okay. Any public comment?
Why not? Eagles are playing.
I like Eagles. Now, these are real, this one is real simple. Sorry I missed the beginning, but starting January 2022, yard waste will be picked up every Wednesday?
Yes.
Did that increase the fees?
Thanks, Kristen.
The fees were increased, but that didn't increase them. It
Oh,
was,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that, every week.
Yeah, it was just part of the new contract.
Okay.
It,
That wasn't really, yeah.
it allows Wazinski to be able to maintain their staffing at a more even
Right.
level. So that's why we're
Okay.
doing that.
I mean, I like it.
Yes.
I'd like to make one public comment. I want to extend a big thanks to Derek and Dave for all the emails that they've addressed, all the silly questions I might have asked. I never felt better about coming to these meetings in such a long time. And part of that is due to Dave and answering all my type of accounting questions that I think I know.
You're very welcome, Ross.
So I really do feel comfortable with all the responses I got. So I just want to say thank
Great
you.
for us to
That's
hear
great
too,
for us to
and
hear. Thank
great
you.
for you to share it with publicly and wish you guys the
Well,
best.
this is the last time we talked this year. Well, many more next year.
All right.
Thanks, Russ. We don't have any liaison reports, no correspondence reports, and entertain a motion for adjournment.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everybody.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New
Happy New
Year.
Year.
Next year.
See you out there.
Well,
Hey,
Where have
Tom.
you been?
Well, you know, I kind of did it when I was at PT today. I'm ready. Well, you play